And we are back here once again for the next week of Big Brother 28. This, of course, is week 6, and it's certainly a week to talk about. Look, there's a lot that happened this week that I think could have been, and I'm gonna continue to use the word could have. They're been very exciting. Like this could have been a really strong week, but there's so many things that consistently got in the way of it and really just took it from a week that I think could have been a really exciting one and ended on a really exciting note, I think, to one that's now going in a direction that feels like nothing that happened this week actually mattered. Nothing that happened in the last 2 weeks, in fact, actually mattered, because apparently people can just do whatever they want and there's zero consequences to any of it. So why should it matter? But anyways, we'll get into all of that. But before we do discuss the week overall, I do want to introduce my guest for this podcast, someone I'm always excited to have on. Surprisingly, has not been on my channel in a little bit, but someone I always appreciate talking pretty much anything with, but especially when it comes to strategy on Big Brother and things like that and Survivor. Always a great time. Very excited to hear this person's insight. It is the amazing Jacob Adorno. What's going on, man?
I'm doing magnificent. I'm doing stupendous. There were 2 parts of this week. I was really... one I was happy. One I was surprised by, and my name is the one I was surprised by. I was like, no shot. Until I found out what it was. It was like, oh, Angela learned a trick from Tucker. My guys giving helpful Big Brother advice.
Certainly surprising. Yeah, your name says it all. Truly, the impossible happened in terms of the blockbuster last night. I think by far, regardless of things that are frustrating me, one of the most exciting blockbusters we've ever had, but we will get into that a little bit later. Before we do discuss the week overall, though, Jacob, I'm going to ask you the 2 questions that I've asked everybody that have been on the podcast. Of course, first question being, what were your initial expectations going into this season, and how have you felt about this season overall so far?
Going into it, I every time at the beginning of the season, it's jarring for me. It's process. These are actually human beings, and they were not made by AI. I was like, here's the thing, because I know who Barrett is. I actually played with Barrett earlier on the season, so I was like, I know he's real. So everyone else has to be. So like, it didn't feel that way. It felt very, I don't know what's the word to look for. It felt abnormal how everyone seemed to have some semblance of athletic background, which made me both intrigued and concerned for the season as a whole. I was concerned because I'm seeing Big Brother, obviously the format itself, catering more towards physically dominant players. And even like the past couple years where I don't think the best competitor had won, it still was seasons determined and dictated by those compies. You know, we saw it Morgan last season, Keanu be a cockroach who would have been like a second or third week evictee in any other season except for BB27, and then BB26, obviously MJ in the back half.
Yeah. Oh God.
It's like, don't get me started with that. Don't get me started with 25 and prior. But I was like concerned about that. Now it's trickling into the casting. Now the casting is catering more towards like, oh, we need athletic people, because there's like obviously like the Kamus, like the Haleys of the world, who are obviously built, but then there's people like Barrett who like is also pretty lean, also has some history in sports. Like I was concerned, but also intrigued because like there's no, at least what I thought, there would be no immediate people on the outs, because what usually happens is, because Derek Levasseur broke Big Brother forever, was just you take all the great competitors, put them in one alliance, run the table, and now there's competitors aplenty, so you could pick really anybody to be a part of this elite roster, and you'll probably have like a pretty competent. And the one thing that I have at least liked about the season is that it hasn't felt like a steamroll from a physical perspective. It's not the same person winning competitions over and over and over and over again, even if like obviously we talked about the evictee, who I think we're maybe like a week or 2 out from seeing him accomplish that. How I feel about the season as a whole, whenever at the beginning of the season it looks like a steamroll, I'm like, let's wait a minute. You know, 4 or 5 weeks in,
the same way.
I'm being a little optimistic. Obviously, the lyric blind side I felt really sparked my interest back into the season, because I saw a lot of players with these very fatal flaws.
Yeah.
But most players, and I would still say that's still the case now, demonstrated tons of potential in one of the social or strategic elements of the game, which I was very lacking, which was very lacking in 27.
Yeah.
And in some aspects also lacking in 26, where I feel like most of these people here, given another run or had been placed on another cast, could have done really well or found some similar success. But now I'm back on a low note. And kind of like what you said, a very interesting HOH result. Yash won HOH, and I had no idea because I don't think he needed it. So I was like, oh, who is he going to put up?
Yeah.
Who is he going to target? How is he going to navigate this week with having to burn a couple people who felt pretty good with Josh? I don't think he was in, aside from what ends up being now the minority now, I think he was in everybody's core, but I think he was on the peripheral where somebody will eventually want to target someone in their core just because they're too big of a threat to win, and Yash will be kind of the last member and the beneficiary of that. It's like, oh, why are you guys eating at each other? I'm not complaining. So, yeah, the week didn't play out well for Yash, and I don't think it's really Yash's fault.
Yeah, I'm very, as you know, I've been very back and forth with this season. There are things I've really liked. I especially liked, the beginning of week 2 and seeing all the messiness with like the Rome blind side and things like that. That was a lot of fun. I really liked the lyric, vote flip. I thought the way that was done, it was like, okay, we're seeing that these crossover, that, these vets are really not that clean of players, that they're just kind of going to do shit to do shit. And maybe that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then we had Lala's HOH last week, and I was like, okay, we're actually starting to see things maybe turn around. We're starting to see some cracks form. Like maybe some things will really change here. And it seemed like this was going to be the HOH that was like really going to take this season in a different direction. It was like, oh my God, this could be like the turning point of the season, turning point considering who leaves, Jesus Christ. But this could be the real like pivotal moment of the season. And you get to the actual week and you're reminded, oh, wait, the vets are just always going to win the day, it seems. And no matter what happens, it doesn't matter if you're playing suboptimally. It doesn't matter if you're making mistakes. It doesn't even matter if you fucking form an alliance and then don't do shit with it for the rest of the week. You're just always going to get your way somehow. And it's just one of those seasons. And I think we just have to kind of accept it at this point. So needless to say, I'm really not happy with how this week went. But let's go ahead and start from the beginning here. See how we got to this HOH, because we start off on Sunday's episode where we see Haley's really not unhappy to see Chuk go with the fact that they were so locked in on day 1, but is hoping to pivot her game from here. Now, let me just say, Haley wants to pivot her game. Haley's pivoting her game is really just Haley like sitting out of the week, pretty much. There's not really a lot of movement from her this week. There's not really a lot of pushing from her. I feel like Haley's just kind of accepted her fate at this point, and it's not looking amazing for her. We do see Angela is trying to kind of rebuild things with her because she talks about now they don't show this on the episode, but the reason Angela did this is because Haley got that random like yell like when she won the blockbuster. So like Angela's under the impression that Haley's like now like a favorite from America and everyone's like being nice to her now, and says that Lala is a horrible woman. Angela says she doesn't like how she hurts her, but also lets her know that she never flipped the vote to hurt her. Now, Haley does trust her, but she doesn't plan to tell her everything now to kind of play her own game. She's also confident she will be winning the next time capsule. She's confident. It's going to happen, Jacob. Like she's had a really rough 6 weeks, but this is going to be the time that finally things turn around for her. Jacob, how do we feel about Haley? Just the delusion in her overall.
I'm keeping it a buck. These last 2 weeks, I wanted her to stay, not because I like her, but almost entirely because of this. I'm going to get the next thing.
Yeah.
And so this week, I was like, obviously, we'll talk about the results of everything, but I was just like, the best part about all of this is that if Haley survives, it will be yet another opportunity to go to the time capsule, and she's going to realize, oh, I didn't get picked again. Because how do you explain after 6 times, 6 different people got it, and all 6 are still in the game?
Yeah, I will never be a full-on Haley fan, but what I have turned into is someone who enjoys watching her, I feel like, for like ironic reasons at this point. Like just her pure just like delusion and just complete misunderstanding of like one, how people are viewing her, but also like what she's doing wrong as a player is generally so much fun to watch. And I've really enjoyed just seeing her just still not being able to fully like understand it. We see that Lala's obviously not happy that Haley won the blockbuster either, with how much she doesn't like her, feels that her winning proves even more how big of a threat that she really is. So again, it's still not really looking great for Haley. We see Drew talks with Melody about the fact that Haley's still here and that she could very well put the both of them up, but also Taylor and Lala. And Melody's kind of feeling like Haley's playing everyone with her victim nonsense and hopes that one of FAP, because, you know, they can't say FAP on the show, but they constantly say FAP, can just lock in and win HOH so they can finally take control. And it seems like, you know, hopefully that is going to be the case here. We also see Kamu decides to patch things up with Haley, tells her that he was kind of unsure how to feel about her in the beginning of the week, but with Chuk gone, they can kind of now work freely together. And she lets him in on how D has been pushing a narrative that he put his hand on the Bible as trust that he wouldn't vote her out, which he says he's never had before. We know that this is bullshit. He literally did this with Drew, and this was a huge reason why Drew ended up being saved when he was, because of the fact that they caught him doing this. And Kamu feels that this now shows that he can't trust her and would like to move forward with her and Yash and really can't trust D anymore. So Kamu is fully after D at this point. And then we get to the HOH, which is a knockout competition. And I'm just going to run through how this ended up going because there's some interesting things to talk about here. We see it starts off with Yash and Kamu. Yash wins. Okay. We see Yash picks Angela versus Melody. Melody wins. Okay. That makes sense. We see Melody then picks Taylor versus D. D wins. D picks Devens. Hold on. Say that again. D. No, that can't be right. D picks Devens. Yeah, D actually picks Devens in this knockout comp. And Jacob, let's just go through this real quick because look, there's been some things that D and Devens have done that have shown that they're not the greatest of Big Brother players, but this is like such an obvious, like, you don't do this here. Like when you're in a knockout comp, generally you are trying to choose people you don't want to win HOH. Choosing somebody because you don't want to be perceived as a duo with them, it just never really going to work out. What did you think of this buffoonery?
I could get that for like a because like for example like some relationships that have been like understated during the game, like Kamu obviously just repairing his relationship with Haley. If it was like, okay, I got to pick Haley, I got to make sure people think that we're on opposite sides now. But us as comp beasts, we got to stick together. That's one thing. Yeah. If it's not obvious, and obviously there's maybe some like hindsight bias for us. Obviously, we're aware of how close those two are. Right. And at the end of the week, it's indisputable at this point. But so much talk has been going on about in discourse about the icons as a group, as a contingent of people. Yeah. Not even just like, oh, like coincidentally someone's gunning for Angela D and Devens and they just also happen to be icons. No, they're gunning for the icons. They're gunning for all three of them. So D doing this and essentially putting Devens' life in this competition, it's like a 50-50 chance. I don't particularly love. We'll talk about this because you mentioned consequences. And of course, we'll talk about some of the personal consequences, but just like, one thing that I look for as a host of games and also just like a spectator is like consequences of poor decisions. Like I will obviously like people can find poor gameplay or suboptimal moves entertaining, especially if the outcome of said moves are very exciting and open up the game in a way to where like the lyric blindside, for example. I don't think that was. I don't think it was handled in the greatest way possible.
No, not at all. Especially with what we're seeing now, definitely not handled correctly.
But I love it from like an entertainment perspective. I'm just waiting for like when does that lyric blindside result in people facing adversity as a result? Because it's like now I can't even reward or be relieved to see good gameplay, because the bad gameplay and the good gameplay both result in the same outcome. It's like, oh, like you're getting rewarded, or it's more like you're being absolved of the poor decision making. So it's
Exactly.
like, well, of course, seeing how it's like small stuff like this. I think Devens, especially D, because they both come from D comes from the new era of Survivor, comes from this very fast-paced game where 3 weeks in the Big Brother house is an entire season of Survivor.
Exactly.
Like they vote off every 1 to 3 days in that game. And while Devens
very clearly, like when she's not in power and she's not on the block, she's just bored. Like it's very obvious that's like what's happening.
She's breaking into hives. And like Devens is obviously this very high octane. He's like a new era player from like before the new era. Like I feel like this was like that was designed for someone like Devens to thrive in just constant chaos. And it's even more rapid pace. The things that he was doing on the edge of extinction, imagine that, but less than 2 weeks. It's like process everything. So Devens is working triple overtime to pull off as much chaos as possible, and he's also getting bored too. And I think that there's a way this week, like all the Dutch could have survived without the diamond power of Vino. But like we could. Maybe that's a hot take. I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, there's hindsight bias. We know Angela beats Haley, so like there's no concern of Haley winning the blockbuster if the noms just stayed the same. But yeah, that's not the greatest choice on the planet, not the most questionable choice that D or Devens have made, or I guess this is mostly just on D, has made this season. But just like, what's the point? Like at this point, I think it's common knowledge that D and Devens are close, like even without the diamond power of Vito being
exactly. Yeah, it's just very unnecessary what happens here. And we see immediately it ends up being a mistake because Melody ends up winning this between her and Devens. Melody then picks Yash versus D, where Yash wins, eliminating D, which again immediately squanders their chances there. And even Angela's like, what are you guys doing here? Which you know, when Angela is saying it's a bad move, that it's probably a bad move. We see that Yash then picks Barrett versus Mallory. Barrett wins. Barrett then picks Yash versus Melody, and Yash wins. And it then comes down to Yash versus Barrett, where, yes, Yash does win and is the new HOH. And I was shocked to see this when the feeds came back and saw that Yash was the one that won. I was like, oh my God, we are in for some shit, because, I mean, Yash has done such a good job at kind of just like insulating himself fully in the middle, playing that kind of yes man game where like he just agrees with what that person is saying, but in reality like has his own agenda. He just needed to find the right time to push it. And I kind of agree with you. Like, I don't necessarily think he needed this HOH, but I'm very happy he did get it, because, I mean, immediately we see he is going to make sure from the beginning, like, he makes a big move this round. He is not going to let this power just slip by at all, and that is something I definitely do give Yash a lot of credit for here. And we see that Angela is really not feeling great with Yash's HOH, knowing that he is coming for the icons. Melody does not trust Yash either, and is worried that she may see the block this week, and doesn't really seem like it's going to go great for people in FAP, and he could potentially nominate some of them. We see Taylor feels great, on the other hand, with Yash winning, with how well they formed a relationship the past few weeks. Even though for some reason the episodes barely decide to show her, Taylor plays a pretty instrumental role in this week. She does just as much work as Yash does to make sure that things go the way that they do. And the fact the show is discrediting her is just really unfortunate to see, because she really is doing a lot of great work here. We see that D and Devens are also debriefing a bit. He thinks he's going after Haley and potentially Angela. They both are psyched to see that they still have not been nominated 6 weeks in, and just wait for that. The fact that they like this is what I'm saying. Like, the fact that they are so confident that like things are going to go well for them here. Oh, we have the Wolf Pack. This is an alliance that he's going to stick to. It's like, he doesn't have to. Like, this is not an alliance that like you've really done anything with, so I don't really know why they felt so safe here, other than they're the vets and everything's just going to go their way.
Yeah, because like, I mean, they blindsided Yash too, and they were trying to like, they were framing it in a way where like, well, if both D and Angela voted for Melody to go.
Yeah.
That the what the fuck? Like, they're supposed to imply like, oh no, Yash was the third vote. Like Yash is obviously really good to that, and just like I'm on to y'all now because he immediately almost immediately I want to say that week ends up like no, I believe Kamu now. Like I think there was a point where he was a little bit hesitant, and same thing with Chuk, but just like he obviously at the end of that week, just how
he figured it out.
Angela kind of self-combusts and like D obviously confesses at some point. Well, like again, another delusion of Haley was just like she just messed up. Yeah, she didn't mean to do it. She was just a little embarrassed.
She just messed up. She didn't mean to vote that way.
She didn't know. She slipped up and said lyric instead of melody. I was like, no, it's not. Again, it's like, what? Which is insane to me. But like, just Yash to me was such an interesting HOH because I'd argue he's the only person who I don't see who puts him up. Like if anybody won that HOH, I don't see who looks at the cast, looks on the memory wall, and just like, nah, Yash needs to go up on the block. Like, I mean, like maybe D, like maybe, which like again, if that case would be just like that should raise some flags of like, okay, maybe a Yash HOH isn't the greatest thing for my game if they're on my block, but just Yash was, and honestly, him and Taylor, I'm like, they need to start showing these people more because I think that Yash and Taylor have been very obviously under-edited and undermined. And which, to be fair, you know, I was down on them in the beginning too. Like preseason, I'm thinking Yash is a clown, and I don't love the.
And I thought that for the first couple weeks
from Taylor, like, and I think that a lot of people were just like, oh, he's just a misogynist, like he has no chance of winning. But just slowly, with just all of these crumbling relationships, all these ever-changing and fluid dynamics of everybody being paranoid and distrustful of their allies, Yash has kind of been this consistent, steady, like just presence who's kind of under the radar, kind of just building some nice personal and social bonds with people to where he is. And then when you hear his strategies, like not irrational and like he's not playing into some of the manic gameplay that some players are being rewarded for. Like he's not really being labeled as sketchy or double, triple, quadruple dealing and dipping like some other people are being accused of or caught of. So honestly, while I don't agree that he should have won this HOH, and I think he would have been fine, I think the alternative being Barrett kind of enables a power structure that would be very bad for Yash. Like he himself might not be up on the block, but we might see a Taylor up on the block, a Lala up on the block. We might see a Kamu up there. And like Haley might not have been the greatest move for him in the sense of like shifting and shaping the house in a way that benefits him and puts him in a very influential position. But like arguably of the options I've listed, there's probably the best case scenario for Yash. I think all those other people are very close allies, of course, but also if Yash wants to maintain the middle position and kind of be Switzerland in the house and just be neutral, then like a Haley would be an easy, like, I mean, guys, we all know what the deal is. Just get rid of Haley here. But Yash was this excitement doesn't last all that much longer. I will give Yash props for something later. Very, very
yes, we'll definitely talk about that. Like I said, I think on paper, I think that this is a win that, you know, is good to have at this point in the season. It's like we don't really know what he's going to do. Yash knows he kind of has to choose a side here. You know that, you know, things aren't really going in the Vets direction. Now there's a chance to really like kind of fuck things up a bit. And immediately we see that he's presented with this, you know, he has very limited options here. He knows he does, but he knows that he also needs to make sure that the Vets go up this week. So he decides to talk with Kamu a bit, throws up putting up Haley and Angela with the fact that he was left out of the vote. He is initially also thinking Melody or D. He thinks, you know, Melody's someone that he could potentially put up here, but D would be like the bigger shot. But Kamu really wants D to be the target this week and wants to push to make that happen. And let me just gripe on this episode for a little bit, because I have praised this season that I think the episodes have been fairly well edited. The one thing that this episode did not show that I think was actually pretty crucial is the fact that the whole reason Yash is upset with the vets, it's actually not because of the lyric flip. It's because of the fact that they almost did the same thing the week before with blindsiding, with deciding to keep Haley for virtually no reason over Chuk. And this is something that, Yash finds out about. He's very upset about it. I do think that the lyric one was recoverable, but this is really the one that makes Kamu and Yash realize, like, okay, they literally just try.
I think it's Kevin. You good? I'm kind of concerned.
I don't know what the hell happened.
Okay, got it. I was about to say, do I need to? I was about to say, do I gotta like? Taryn's gone now. Oh no! I guess this is. I'm scared. I was like, I didn't know if it was.
We kind of just froze. But no. I'm so baffled by the gameplay from these vets and the lack of consequences that even my internet's on the fritz now. No, but in all seriousness, I totally understand why Yash and Kamu are upset here. Like, if you do it once, that's one thing. It's like, okay, maybe we can try to recover from this, but you do it again, it's like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the point of us continually being left out of the votes if you're not going to include me? Very much a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing. And you can see that Kamu knows immediately what the right decision is here, but Yash is a bit hesitant at this point. We do go then to the BB time capsule, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I do want to talk more about Yash's HOH here. And one of the key mistake I think he does ultimately make is in this conversation with Drew and Kamu, where basically they talk about how it's like, all right, there's 5 of us left. We got to make sure that a guy does not leave this week. And so therefore, we got to make sure it's all women on the block. We can't possibly put one of our own up. We see Yash is kind of unsure whether or not Melody's concerned. He voted for her. Drew doesn't do a good job of like trying to defend her here. Literally says like, oh, she's expressed that to me before, which again, just shows how bad of an ally that Drew actually is. But Kamu pushes back about how she's expressed how she wants to find people to work with and that they could potentially be people for her. And I'm just going to say it right now. Like, if we want to talk about the one mistake Yash does make this week, I do think if you are going to put up the vets, you just go full sail. Like, at this point, they've blindsided you a multitude of times. The Wolfpack is not really a real alliance because you haven't really done anything together. The other groups that Devens makes with you clearly didn't matter anyway, considering what he does later in the week. I really do think Yash should have just put up all 3 of them at the start. And obviously, yes, there's the concern that a power's out there, but at least you're burning something. Considering what ends up happening, I think it would have worked out better for him anyway. I do think the scenario of what happens likely does still happen, but there's a much better chance that Yash does actually get his way, as opposed to what he does instead, which I've talked about before, was going to be a big mistake. For me, if I really have to look back at Yash's HOH and say, where did it go wrong, despite all the, stuff that is working against him that's out of his control, this is the one thing I think he maybe could have done differently.
Yeah, because like I want to correct something I mentioned earlier that I misspoken about. When I mentioned like, oh, Yash was blindsided by the lyric at I'm pretty sure he was told and just turned it down. It's like, I don't think this is best for me. It's like Yash especially was recoverable, and it felt more egregious that despite his honestly pretty rational response to it all, obviously with the D and the Angela lie of it all, potentially implicating that he was involved in the blind side when he wasn't. If anything, he was informed of it happening, but still didn't go through with it. That's how locked in for the Melody eviction he was. And I feel that, kind of like you said, that was recoverable. And I kind of saw D making some moves with Kamu that seems to have locked in Kamu when she tells him about her power and tells him about kind of the perception of Kamu as far as his affiliation with Chuk and Haley are concerned. Yash, to me, like kind of just like what you said, at that point, just go full tilt. I think that if he still wins this veto, he keeps noms the same, then hell, I don't think he loses Kamu here. Because like I think that if all three of them are up on the block, Devens obviously has the dime power view. He's not going to use it on somebody else. He's going to use it on himself. And he, instead of thinking, oh, let me put up the best competitor on the board here, he's clearly going to be a dangerous threat long term. I think he puts up someone like a Patel or like a Lala in this situation as someone who would be easier to beat. I don't think he puts up a Haley either in the situation, even though I think there's arguments that maybe he should have had she had been an option. So like I think that Yash should have put up all the vets. And even if he doesn't go through with that and he puts up like a Melody instead, I think that's salvageable. I think putting up Haley's also an error. Because I think that at the point where he commits to, I'm going to get rid of the vets, and Haley is also on the block, though, because, like, of course she's going to be on the block. It's Haley, you know? I think that that's somebody who could have easily been a warrior for him in the vote. And, like, strategically, I think this could have been a good week of kind of bringing Haley into his corner. Whereas kind of now, it's kind of like she's kind of forced to, like, at this point, not due to really Yash's work, but more so the poor work of other people who Haley has sworn her allegiance to prior, but just keeps floundering it. And honestly, I keep forgetting that they were going to do the exact same thing the week prior, because to me, obviously, the lyric eviction was so big, and obviously the last minute, the nature of it all. Like, they don't even edit the episode to imply it's even a possibility, because, like, CBS did not know that Lyric was going to be going home. It looked like it was going to be Melody or Drew, and it would have been Melody had Drew just won the blockbuster. Drew, if not. And it blends together as just, the same thing. Like, to me, it wasn't distinct, because I'm just like, this is more stupid. Like, what's crazy is that about that week is that I could understand the blindsiding of getting rid of Chuk over someone like a Haley, really, or just getting rid of Chuk. Mm-hmm. I could understand that, and I can. Because to me, with Lyric versus Melody, they could have easily just told them, hey, I think we should get rid of Lyric here. Yeah. Kamu would have been probably a little pissing about it. But just like Chuk and Haley would have been fine with this, I feel. Cared. This one here, I think it's like, everyone hates Haley. Well, Chuk is similarly also a good competitor. And I think in their minds, Haley is an easy person to either go up or someone who will be sure sent home over any of us because just of how despised she is and how abhorrent her social game is. Which, like, I mean, I don't think Chuk's is all that much better, but maybe Chuk is a little bit more amendable. Is more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I feel like he's not as unpleasant to live with. As long as he's washing himself. But this week, it's, I do unfortunately have to dock Yash some points for, I think, poor third nom. I do agree with the route he ends up going. And, like, he does decide on D, which is good. I think if he does the Haley, Angela, Melody nom set, then nobody is really happy with him, really, aside from just his core people who are always going to just be happy that, like, Yash won HOH and they're not seeing the block again. Because then the FAP, the PAP, will be upset. Obviously, Melody's on the block. The vets will be upset. And then what for, like, a likely Haley eviction anyways? Like, what did he gain from that week? I don't think he really gains anything. So I think he definitely needed to pick a side, and I think he chose correctly, but will apparently not, according to CBS.
Yeah, just very unfortunate, because I do think, again, if, I said before, I was very worried that someone of Yash or Taylor or Melody or Mallory, any of them, they were going to win this HOH, and they were going to make the key mistake of putting up Haley because, well, it's easy to do that. The problem is we saw what happened this week, and it really leads to a very suboptimal HOH when you are putting up somebody that virtually everybody in the house dislikes. and you don't necessarily want them to go, everybody else is just going to vote them out because of the fact that they don't have that connection to them versus a D, versus an Angela, where despite the lack of work they do this week, where I don't think either of them really play this week very well at all, they at least are enslaved. They have their people. Haley does not really have her people. And so I really do think Yash messes up by deciding to put her up here. But we'll talk a little bit more about some other things he does. He does talk to Angela about the fact that she is a consideration for the fact she hasn't been nominated yet. She tries her best to pitch, making it seem like she isn't involved and would never put him up or say his name. And Yash is like, listen, I'm not fucking stupid. Like, what are you doing? And this is really where, like, I've said it before, like, Angela, when she is, the reason why Angela has been not as bad this season in terms of gameplay is because of the fact that she's been in power and she hasn't had to necessarily, like, deal with the stuff that she did in 26, or like here, like you really do see that she's just very bad at not making herself look threatening, at not making herself look like a target, and she basically gives him all the ammo to essentially put her up here. So really not great work from Angela. And then you have D, who I think takes an even worse approach, where she essentially tries to like force Yash into just taking the bribe. She doesn't even really try to pitch anything here. He just talks about he wants to go after Angela and Haley, feeling like they have been involved in most of the chaos and that she put him up week one. And again, doesn't really pitch anything to him, just immediately goes into trying to bribe him. She takes the opportunity to bribe him with $5K, asking if he wouldn't target her, Angela, for the week, which he declines because that's ridiculous. Why would he do that? And then changes to just keeping herself safe. And he still is like, and this one he's a little bit more unsure about. But again, the way D goes about this, I just think is very frustrating because, again, you just think about the world where D doesn't have this bribe. It's generally seems like she has no other sort of out here. She has no way to really like pitch her case to stay. She is so reliant on her advantage, and it's just really frustrating to watch because, again, you think about, well, what if she didn't have this? The whole week probably would have gone differently for her because she probably doesn't have any leg to stand on at that point. She actually has to try to pitch her case. She actually has to try to build relationships with people. Instead, she is completely relying on things saving her that have nothing to do with work that she herself is doing. And it's just, it's so frustrating, Jacob.
The fact that like the diamond power of veto and like the never a have not pass are both supposed to be equally like, you are just as equally likely to receive them through the time capsule, and they're supposed to both be considered prizes is insane to me. Mm-hmm. And like when D first was announced that she got this bribe power, I'm like, okay, interesting. I thought, well, for one, I thought it was the same amount of money. I thought it was 10,000. That it was less than that. So I was like, okay, not as enticing, but can be workable. It's no diamond power of veto, but like if someone is just that desperate for money, I guess like she could sell this, and she's really trying to make the most out of this power, which I can at least admire her tenacity to try to do something with the bribe to get her off of the block. I know a lot of people were speculating like, oh, D's gonna be creative with the bribe and like bribe someone for their jury vote if they make it to the end, which like I mean I guess they never explicitly state that she can't do that, but I just kind of felt like it's just like a defense mechanism. I feel it's like, hey, don't put me up. I feel like it's just what most people will just default to as a condition of the bribe. It's like, you do this, I will do this, like an exchange of some sort. And I think that she was I think Yash saw this as only beneficial for her. Like if D kind of what she ends up doing again after, I guess it's not a week 6 thing, it's more of a week 7 thing, and kind of just like, I do this, you do this for me, like, or you do this, I will do this for you. This is how I can serve your game. This bribe that means you're just as tied to it as I am tied to my end of the bargain. So like if she goes in there with that kind of tactic, that type of angle, and only really pitches the whole 5K. Because I think another thing that she mentioned to Devens at how she was trying to handle it was like, it's going to start at 5K, but then I'm going to keep dropping it further down. I feel like it could have been the opposite of just like, hey, like 3K I will no shoot it. I'll throw in the entire money, all $5,000, if you keep me off the block. And
that's
if
the
you
thing.
hold your end of the
The
bargain,
more
I will not.
money is, there's more incentive for him to take it. Whereas, like, if
Exactly.
you're just like, oh, $2,000, you're gonna keep me and Angela safe. It's like, that's $2,000. I could get that in a comp. Like, I don't
exactly.
understand. Like that's nothing. Like,
That's the stipend for the week.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what's frustrating about this, is that it's like there's really no other approach she had other than to try to bribe him. And you see that Taylor is like kind of enticing him to do it. It seems like maybe there's a possibility he's going to take it, but yeah, Yash is allegedly smarter, because we'll talk about later. But at this point, Yash decides to not take the offer. He does decide to nominate Dee, Angela, and Haley. And like I said, I do think he makes a mistake here in nominating Haley. He pretty much regrets it instantly. And I do think that if he had a second to kind of think about it, I think just going for Dee, Angela, and Devens really is the move here. He's very much thinking that like he has Devens locked in, and there's really no reason to think that at this point. So that's really, I would say, like the main flaw with Yash's HOH. But I do really commend him for not taking the bribe here and actually deciding to put her up.
I mean, I think 27's broken me. I think that like small things like that, I'm just like, good on you for like not throwing that veto, man, when you're up on the block. Like good on you for not taking this lousy bribe that he's offering him. Like good on you, Yash, because it's just like this is the first week where I'm thinking, oh, the vets are in like the back foot a little bit.
Right.
You know, like obviously multiple of them are seeing the block for the first time, and Yash is coming. No, I want an icon gone this week, and was very determined to try to get that to happen this week. And all of the pieces were falling perfectly into place to let that happen, despite putting Haley up on the block, where like it wasn't impossible. Haley just wins the blockbuster and course corrects the week for him to where one of Angela or Dee goes home. But like I think that I was really worried. I mean, if he just takes that, then I probably would have lost investment a lot earlier on in the week. That's kind of what kept me going, because Yash was like all for it. Like he was locked in. I'm like, nah, Yash is not locked in. And then I hear that he's turning it down. I was like, oh, my guy's making big money moves now. My guy. I now see why people are buying the tickets.
Yeah. Exactly. I like I said to you before this podcast, like there are still things about Yash that I'm not happy, that I'm not necessarily like thrilled about, but I nearly have the ticket to the train. I'm not quite on the train yet, but I'm nearly, I have those tickets. I'm just waiting to kind of get there. And this was a way to kind of potentially get me on that train. Because like I said, I do think that nominating Dee and Angela, absolutely the right move. Definitely a shot that other people weren't willing to take. And I will definitely commend him on that. So I think that all is really good. Only other thing to talk about before, I do want to mention very quickly a really funny line he did have, where where when she initially presents him the 5K, he talks about how much money he could use for Chipotle. I thought that was pretty funny.
Chipotle is my life.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was pretty funny. But before we do move on to Wednesday's episode, I do want to quickly talk about the time capsule here. Not really a ton to talk about because Melody wins the time capsule, like we kind of expected her to. Definitely happy to see her get it. You know, been a big Melody fan from the beginning. Not so much gameplay wise after this week. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But we see that she receives a punishment, and she's now, once again, she has a punishment here because, you know, why wouldn't she have a punishment? Why would she get anything good? You know, that wouldn't be fun. We're just going to make her the lady of the latrine, give her a punishment that we used in Big Brother 23 that, you know, DX was a big standout with, where basically every 24 hours, she has to yell whenever someone's going to use the bathroom. Now, I will say, very fun to watch. I did like how her attention kept getting louder and louder each time. And like you could tell like how increasingly annoyed everyone was by this. That's always fun to watch. But again, I mean, I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I've talked a great deal about how the time capsule's bullshit. I don't even really like talking about it much. I think they should have waited way later in the season to even introduce something like this. And to me, the whole thing just screams like we are just so worried about the vets leaving. We are doing this massive overcorrection for what happened with Rachel last season and really not giving it any other thought beyond we just need to make sure that the vets are like well secure, because if they leave, that'll be the death of the season or something like that.
Like, here's the thing, because they're doing this overcorrection, and it's like the issue wasn't like they didn't give Rachel advantages.
Exactly.
It's like they had a really stupid twist that just so happened to leave their veteran vulnerable, and but aside from that, didn't stack up the game in a way against Rachel to where Rachel was doomed. Like, aside from just that dumb hamster wheel that they put in the season from reindeer games, like, so if they just kept it just a clean slate, like just everybody's on the same level, them already only allowing the vets to win the first HOH of the season, that was already kind of eyebrow raising. That's a little bit eye squinting right there. But then obviously this twist on top of it, how the hell are these strangers going to beat out people with already established fan bases? And people from Survivor are now going to tune into Big Brother now. Like, oh, Dee and Devens are here. We just saw them play 50. All the fans from the past couple of years are going to recognize and know who Angela is. So obviously she's going to very likely win into this. And even like, while Jason wasn't presented as an icon, I mean, also has a fan base from RuPaul's Drag Race. And so like, those people are way more set up to win a fan vote of any nature. So for it to be this, it's obviously stacked heavily in the favor of the veterans. So like, I don't even think that this is a twist that should have been implemented, period, on a season with people with like any veterans. This was like a 26 situation. Like, everybody was a newbie. Everybody was starting off in a clean slate. Nobody knows anybody from here. There's no like, oh, Cameron was on The Voice season 12 or some shit. Like there wasn't that, you know. There was nobody.
Lyric was on American Idol, so you know you had that.
Maybe she would have won the 5th one if she was still.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like I think that this kind of twist is only fair when everyone's on the even playing field. Even if it's all returnees, then I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna love this because there's obviously more like if we brought like new like post 22 all-stars, then like Tiffany is gonna get it before like I feel like Vince is gonna get it. Like I personally believe like at least everybody has played before and nobody is coming in here with an advantage of just being established as a player, as a social strategist. But yeah, no, I hated this twist for that reason. Very unfortunate outcomes, especially for the back half of this. It's very uneven. If it was 6 decent powers and 6, while unfortunate, but like livable punishments, then I would still be annoyed because like obviously the vets are probably going to be the first 3 to get in there, which they were. Maybe Jason would have broken that had he not been evicted week 3. But it's very uneven as well. They didn't have 6 things you really wanted in as prizes, and like the punishments might have been all relatively equal from one another, but definitely not those powers that just conveniently landed in Rick Devens' lap. In which like I know some people are thinking like it's rigged. I've never spoken on production interference.
Big Brother 13 kind of was, but that's probably
that for sure. They're not getting away with that. There's no buying that. This is just like I can maybe believe it's just a very unfortunate circumstance, but it's a less than 10% chance.
I think that truthfully, they just really wanted the vets to do well. And they thought that like, okay, we do this and we like, if I had to look at this in a way that isn't completely just production interference, I think that their mindset was like, okay, we are making sure that the vets are well protected here, but we also want to see like who everyone is a fan of. We want to make sure everyone has an equal shot, but they didn't think about the fact that like, oh, 3 of these powers are like so much better than the others. You have an HOH takeover, you got a bribe, and you got a Diamond Power Veto. Like those are all like really stacked. The other things are kind of bullshit. Like who cares about a never not pass? Have nots barely matter in Big Brother these days. And then you have these punishments, which are like, okay, cool. We're kind of pulling from other seasons, but like, is this really stuff that that we really want to like reuse? Can we try to do something else? Like, again, I really do think their mindset was, we want to make sure that these vets are here as long as possible, but we also want to introduce this thing. And they just didn't think about really the long-term effects. I always go back to Big Brother 18 because they did the care packages like way later in the season. And the first person to get it was not one of the returnees. It was Natalie who was the first person to get it. So I actually do think that if they had introduced it at that point, when everybody's established, like it would have gone much better. Like Mallory would have probably gone to power at that point because of the fact that like people would have been, she would have been established. People like Mallory, people have enjoyed all the train stuff she's been doing and things like that. And the buses and all that kind of thing. Like people are enjoying Mallory, and I think that she would have had a chance to get. Taylor probably would have gotten something like there. Jason would have had a chance. Like I think it would have been a lot more of an equal playing field, but they just didn't think about that, and that clearly just, ruined the whole thing. So I'm glad we don't have to talk about it much more. There's only one more week of it, and spoilers, it's not anything to write home about either with what the next thing is, but it just really sucks that the only people that were able to get anything really ended up being the two Survivor players. So yeah, really not great. So we're going to move on to Wednesday's episode here because there is quite a bit to talk about. Yash is immediately unsure who he really wants his target to be. He just knows he wants one of them to go, so it's a successful HOH. We see Haley's kind of unfazed. She's kind of like, she just thinks she's going to win HOH again, or she'll just win other powers. So she's just going to keep smiling. Angela's devastated to be on the block to the point where she's literally like crying in the diary room. And we see like a moment of her like crouching down and crying. It's like classic Angela in that moment. We see Dee is pissed and feels that this can be a huge mistake from Yash because now she will make sure that he will be out of the game. And Kamu does a very good job here, kind of acting in shock about Yash not taking the bride. But seriously, he is happy that Dee is on the block and is really hoping that he can make her the target this week. That is really his sort of goal here. And, we'll talk about how he does a little bit later with that. But we see Barrett does try to comfort Angela a little bit, lets her know that, if she picks him for veto, he would definitely use it on her. So that's potentially something to look out for. Barrett has some relevance potentially, not really, but he's got that going for him, I guess. We see Haley goes to Yash. They kind of have this conversation about how rough a road it's been the past 6 weeks. And he lets her know he's in the hardest predicament, but he really does want her in this game and seems to already be reconsidering nominating her. And this is exactly what I was saying. Like, this is exactly why Haley should not have been at the block at the start, because it really does seem like Yash like pretty much instantly regrets doing so. And I think that this was really an opportunity for Yash to like try to rebuild something with her, maybe even say that like, hey, if you're picked for veto, I'll throw it to you. Like, I think there was a way that Yash really could have potentially gotten Haley here, and it just didn't happen. So very unfortunate. Again, a mistake on his part for doing that.
Yeah, it's messed up too, because she's just been just being picked on just week after week, just relentlessly. She's had like, he didn't need to be the reason that she had a 6th hard week. She's already had 5, like just already enough. Now it's both hands that she needs to use to count how many hard weeks she's been. Like, man, just it's messed up, Yash. Honestly, Yash should be bottom of the Joker rankings now for what you did. How dare you?
Oh yeah, Haley's had quite the rough week for sure. Definitely, it's really unfortunate to see that. But no, in all seriousness, again, Yash just I think definitely did make a mistake not putting her on the block. I'm not gonna go on about it too much more because I've already talked about it. I do think that was a mistake on his part. We see that Mallory's really happy someone has finally took a shot at the vets with how easy of a ride those 3 nominees have had, and how it's also the first week that Fap will not be on the block. And again, we'll come back to this later because Mallory's logic is very confusing this week. She claims that she is very anti-vet, right? She really wants the vets to go. But then she's presented with a choice to potentially like go against them, and we'll talk about Mallory. But there's a lot of things she does this week that is very confusing, especially when I think she was kind of in the best position at this point in the game. We see Drew talks to her and Melody about how people are going to start looking at the four of them as a solid group, and he doesn't really want that to happen. And we see Dee talks to Barrett a little bit, how she's really worried that she's going home. She does not handle this well at all. She's not feeling well that she's on the block. She really feels like she would go. She's immediately regretting picking Devens in the knockout comp. And again, I cannot emphasize enough, Dee does not play this week well. Like, this is literally what she does the rest of the week. It's just kind of sulk around, kind of just, have Barrett like comfort her and just kind of let things happen, pretty much let the game pretty much happen around her. And that is a terrible position. That is a terrible way to kind of rebuild your game after you're put in this spot. When you're nominated, there's actually a chance, I think, for you to potentially turn things around. And again, Dee is so reliant on other things happening. And that's what is frustrating about this week for me, is that I really wanted to, you really think about, again, what happens if Dee doesn't have these safety nets? Does she decide to play things as safe as she really does? And yeah, I agree. This was not a great week for Dee at all. So again, just very frustrating. We see Drew talks with Kamu and Yash a little bit about how big of a swing he took, and Yash talks about how mad Dee is and kind of lets him know that she told him that she'd put up Haley and Drew, and really kind of soft launching this idea that Dee should be a target, especially with how she is taking being on the block. And Kamu is obviously all in for this. This is what he's wanted from the beginning. It really seems like Dee could potentially become the target here. And Drew is very worried about him playing the middle. He thinks he's got himself into some hot water, but for some reason, he still doesn't want Dee to go this week. He thinks that for some reason, Dee is staying is good for him, despite the fact that he is continually playing the middle. And obviously what he is saying is getting back to other people. So yeah, I truly don't know. I truly don't know when it comes to Drew at this point. We see Dee and Devens talk through the possibility of Devens not using the Diamond Power Veto. He actually isn't thinking about using this at first. He's kind of in this position where he's like, maybe I don't do it. And he's kind of worried that it could blow up his alliances, including he's got the primaries with Taylor, Yash, and Kamu, Bermuda Triangle with Kamu and Yash. Very likely the reason he's not being targeted here, because him and Dee have been in separate alliances. And this is kind of how he was sort of separating himself from her. And so he's hoping that she can just win the vetoes so he can hold on to it when he needs it the most. And is kind of hoping that he can be in a position where he doesn't have to use it. So Drew decides to go to Dee pretty much and tells her exactly what Yash has been saying, how tight he is with Kamu, how he's really the one running the whole thing, and that he wants her to be the target. And he's hoping that this can rebuild some trust with her, which seems to be the case. She is now really wanting to gun after Kamu after this. And Jacob, I want to hear your thoughts on Drew, because I feel like people are very back and forth when it comes to this guy. What do we think of Drew, the 22-year-old racist himself?
Preseason, me and Seb do a draft, me and my best friend, right? And we did a draft pick on Teledraft. We didn't pick Drew because I preseason, I could not take the guy seriously. I don't believe he's a real person. I think he's a cartoon character. And so week in and week out, I'm like, first week, I was like, okay, I'm actually pretty impressed by Drew. He's actually doing some pretty solid work. But it's like he's investing so much energy into these relationships that like are taking him for granted. Like, and like on paper, they shouldn't be. Like the vets were about ready to get rid of him week 3, week 4, and where Angela was just chomping at the bit to get this guy out, and he just was not privy to this information at all. And he's undyingly loyal to people who are ready to murder him at just any given notice. And just he should be playing the game that they all suspected that he was playing. And I guess now he's trying to actively, but just I feel like this week I'm back on a low with Drew. I think just enabling the vets, not being subtle at all now at this, because that was like the one thing. It was like so many people were giving him information because they didn't think Drew was with them. And now I think he's making it from like a game perspective very apparent, and it's losing Mallory. Like it's starting to make Melody look a little sideways at him now. And obviously, we've talked a little bit before the recording about some of the microaggressions that have been exchanged, and Drew being the face of a lot of the negative propaganda against Taylor and Lala, their win equity, how they conduct themselves, you know, like, and just not a good look, man. Not a good look.
Yeah, it's bad. And I mean, I guess I'll bring it up now. They don't show this on the show, but like, yeah, Drew has this very negative perception of Taylor and Lala, constantly talks about how like Taylor is somebody that shouldn't be on the show, that she doesn't do enough, constantly is comparing her to like other, black house guests and things like black women who've been on the show and things like that. He also just seems to not like her at all. There was a weird comment about Lala in the beginning of the season about like her wearing a bikini and how he found that weird and things like that. I just really think Drew is very ignorant. He really needs to be put in his place. And we really see this week, especially, that Drew is just so fucking cocky. He's so certain things are going to go his way. He's so certain things are going to go in the right direction. He hasn't tried to pivot his game at all. He's so distracted by, again, constantly shitting on black women that he can't seem to recognize that he's not really in the greatest position and doesn't really do a lot to help himself here. So I'm very down on Drew after this week. I definitely was somebody that like saw the potential in him from the beginning, but I think he's pretty much lost me after this week for sure, especially the fact that, again, he really doesn't seem to have any reason to want to target the icons, and he very well should. Like, I think this absolutely should have been an opening here for him to do that, and he doesn't even attempt to really do so here. So definitely very frustrating.
There it is. I was looking for the mute buttons. But Drew has been very, and I have to say this. I also kind of hold some of the criticisms of his game also to Barrett. Because like I waffle back and forth between like just let's removing all the personal aspects of it all, because obviously like I had heard this and I obviously like the comments about like the comparing like who's Taylor, like also like Taylor Hales, like Chelsea. I'm like you could just like say like one woman that isn't black as a comparison for Taylor. That's not great. Barrett is somebody who I think also has been kind of just working for the vets and playing, like at least Drew is active. At least Drew's like actively seeking information, is actively campaigns like maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Not effectively, not subtly, but he's trying. And I can admire that very much at the very least. Whereas Barrett's kind of like, well, I mean, I wouldn't want this to happen, but like, I mean, if that's what happens, kind of. And I need Barrett to like wake up, and I believe in him still to be able to at some point. Drew, I've lost him. Drew's asleep. Drew's had Benadryl, and he's been drowsy. He'll be drowsy forever this game. Eternal Benadryl. But Barrett, I think he could wake up. I think he could just.
I hope so, because Barrett kind of just like allows things to happen and doesn't really do anything to try to stop it. And I could specifically talk about this week, but that would be going off topic as to what we're talking about in week 6. So we're going to go back on track with that. But again, all this to say, Drew is just continuing to be very frustrating here. So we get to the veto draw. We see Barrett and Melody are both drawn to play in the veto alongside Haley, D, Angela, and Yash. And the veto ends up being Otev. It's 1950s themed. We see it's like based on like a B movie and things like that. I do want to talk about the fact that Angela once again is the first to lose in this competition. It's now like 26 though, where everybody loses and there's just one winner. The game does continue after that. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but once again, we come down to Barrett and Yash. Barrett is like so close to winning something. I feel like it's going to happen. Like it's going to be the next few comps are like Barrett's going to get his first comp win. Like it's going to happen any second now. But ultimately, Yash has like a genius strategy here where he basically decides to hide the card from Barrett entirely. He's able to recognize that like I can just kind of take both of them, and so Barrett doesn't even have a chance to get it. And so with that, Yash does get the veto here and has full power. And you're sitting here and you're like, okay, how does this result in Yash having a failed HOH? Well, we'll talk about that, but Yash pretty much has all the power this week.
Yeah, like I think it was Taryn kind of did like the statistics, like looking at like the placements relative to how many people they beat. Barrett is a better competitor than his zero comp win show that he is. Like I know that some people like person like Mallory as like this comp beast. Statistically, Barrett has done better, has outperformed more people in competitions than Mallory has, and obviously at the end of this week, I think is in one of the best in shape to start winning some competitions, to start wake up from like a physical perspective. I know if I'm Barrett, I'm pissed. It's all these.
Yeah,
this is what too many second places for my life personally at this point. Like get. I want to be on the board, but I know it's probably killing him a little bit inside. I know it would for me too. But just Yash had an out. It's like save this week from what could have been bad for a very different reason that it becomes bad. And while I praised Yash's commitment to gunning for the vets, despite a nom chair not being occupied by a vet, this veto win now would be, I mean, like obviously the HOH has full control over this week. The first time someone swept the week is what I call it. If the HOH, you win HOH and you win veto. And so I'm thinking, oh, Yash is gonna. I mean, yeah, sure, he shouldn't keep the noms the same, but like in the world where Dee and Angela both are still on the block, then he should be fine.
Right. And I mean, there is conversation here. They don't show it in the episode, but Yash was briefly flirting with the idea of potentially using the veto on Haley and potentially taking her off the block. And I do think that honestly was probably the right move here. I think that, again, putting Haley up was just never going to work out in the way that he wanted it to, but he ultimately decides to not do that. We did also forget to talk about the fact that Yash and Kamu are essentially a final two at this point, and they are very much talking through what they're doing. Yash kind of tells Kamu, I don't plan to change the noms. And this is where we really go to Devens here. And it's like, okay, is Devens going to do what we think he's going to do? There was a brief period of time where maybe he wasn't going to use the Diamond Power veto, but he ultimately comes back around to using it, and he has this heart-to-heart with himself about what he really wants to do this week, because he wants to use it on D, but he's not really sure how much he wants to blow things up. That's really the sort of dilemma that he is facing here. So, he talks about how the people he hangs out the most with are Yash and Kamu, but he thinks that he can't really just play with his friends to win. And he feels like it may actually be time to potentially clip Kamu here, and feels that maybe he should take the crossovers and pull in Mallory and Melody, declaring war on everyone else, and wants to use the power to potentially secure this 7-person group, thinks it may be time to blow everything up. And, I'll talk about this. I think that the idea of like, let's try to put this group together. Let's pull in Mallory and Melody because they are with Drew and Barrett. I think it's fine to do that. But Devens does this in like a very like sort of forceful way. He has this heart-to-heart with himself. It seems like maybe this is the right direction for him to be in. I just don't know if for his game, this was the right thing to do. I think if you're trying to separate your game from D, if you're now, deciding to put up Kamu, I think you're immediately now saying my game and D's game is pretty much the same. So while I think it was the right idea for Devens to essentially do what he did, I don't know if he really went about it the correct way here.
I think if like this power was like transferable, that would be ideal here. Like if he gives this to D stands up and says, I have the diamond power of veto. I'm taking myself off and I'm putting up Kamu. Devens faces no repercussions at all for this move. I guess maybe Yash would be like, was the bribe fake? Was the bribe not a thing? Because it's all like, oh, this is D's power. But no, like obviously that I'm assuming was not a property of the diamond power of veto, or a way that he could have played with the DPOV to obviously get what he wants here. I also think that Kamu, like, we could say, okay, obviously we'll talk about Kamu, about the week just as a whole at the end of this, how my thoughts are on Kamu throughout the season. I think Kamu demonstrated lots of potential. And there would be days where I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? But there was, obviously, after Lala winning, his recovery of getting himself just off the block and off the table to even be considered as a renom, going from being the very likely target, considering they flipped the vote onto Chuk for no reason. They absolutely would have taken the shot at him the week prior had he ended up on the block. I think Kamu is capable of doing really good work. Obviously, he's a great competitor. So I understand long-term, Kamu being a big threat for the vets, eventually, but definitely not for Devens himself. And I think that, as far as this Mallory, especially Mallory, considering whether they should side with the mosh pit side of things or they should side with the Yash and the Kamus of it all, I think that the thing that made me ultimately agree with what they did at the end of the week was because I think they needed Kamu out first. I think they needed to get Yash, Lala, these people confidently in their corner, because I think if they go through with this, Yash and Kamu have almost no competition if they just abandon the Barrett, who I think is on the horizon to potentially win something at this point. Those two are confident.
And Barrett is who was going to go up if the veto was used on Haley. I don't know if
that was, if he goes through with that, puts up a Barrett, then does Devens even still do the same thing with the Nam here? Because I know that he had also entertained for a moment potentially putting Taylor up on the block, for example, and potentially making it so that there's a worse competitor on the blockbuster just to ensure the safety of an Angela at some point. I want to say, maybe I'm misremembering things, but I want to say Devens was toying with this idea, which I think would have been at that point, it's Taylor needs to go just as much as Kamu for very different reasons, because that is a really bad relationship for Devens to burn. Taylor put in so much work the week prior to pacify Lala against him, because Devens was her initial target after she first wins HOH and it ends up in the HOH room. So at this point, I understand, D is a very valuable asset to his game, and Kamu long term is going to be a problem. But I think he just took care of the one thing that the one person who FAP would be concerned about more than they're considered about the icons, because Haley's now neutralized. I don't think they're scared of Lala or Taylor for that matter. And I guess the only person left that they might deem as more threatening than the vets themselves is Yash. Potentially. Maybe. I'm not sure. But we'll see how this the week after week 7 plays out, because the vets aren't going anywhere week 7.
Definitely not. So he, like I said, he secures this group. He decides to kind of talk to all of them separately, eventually leading to them forming this group called the Mosh Pit. And we'll talk about how this all goes down, but basically this is the group that they have. Mallory is really happy about this because she's hoping that this can kind of be a way to suffocate Kamu's game with how much of a threat that he really is. She really wants Kamu to go, which, I mean, you can't blame her. He literally put her up on his HOH, and she's been very much against him since then. So very much seems like that's the direction that things are potentially headed. Devens does have this talk with Kamu beforehand just to see, is there a possibility that maybe I don't do this? But Kamu really digs his own grave here. They talk about the possibility of Haley being the target, and he's actually someone that, and that's actually someone that, they can trust. And he brings up how he doesn't trust Dee at all after all the numerous lies and isn't really sure if he can trust her anymore, which basically makes it clear what's going to happen. But we get to the veto ceremony, and ultimately Yash does not use the veto. I do think, like I said, that was a mistake. I think definitely should have probably used it on Haley here, but ultimately he doesn't do that. But that is far from the end, because Devens then uses his Diamond Power veto on Dee, renoms Kamu in her place. Kind of a lame ceremony. Definitely seemed like this should have been a bit more exciting. mainly because it's Kamu. He's not going to try to like yell or do anything crazy here. But ultimately, Kamu is the renom. And look, like I said, I'm very happy that Kamu was renommed here. I do not like Kamu at all. A lot of the things that he has said, especially outside of the house, I really am not a fan of the way he went about like the tea party and things like that. I really have not liked Kamu at all. And so I definitely was not complaining that Kamu was maybe going to go this week, but I was also very nervous that he wasn't going to go because I very much thought he was going to win the blockbuster here. But yeah, ultimately that's kind of how things play out. Let's get to Thursday though, because there's a lot that goes down here that I definitely do want to talk about that I think the edit does show, but there's a lot of things that they also don't show. Some of the things they do show, I think, very well is how well Yash does at really trying to campaign on Kamu's behalf. He makes it pretty clear that he's not happy with the direction that things went, and now he wants to fully, stick it to the vets and make sure he still has a good HOH here. So he works on the two people that he really needs here in Mallory and Melody, and really tries to make them feel like they are a part of a group with him, really seem like they can potentially work with him. Taylor also does some really great work here. The two of them really do a good job on both Mallory and Melody, who are pretty much, fixated on the idea that they want to vote out Kamu. And it seems like that's the direction that they want to go in. Now, what the episode does not show you is that despite the fact that these two are very indecisive, and I'll talk about some of my complaints with them a little bit later, they do at first have the correct idea here, where Mallory's like, okay, what we're going to do is just go to Yash and Taylor at this point of the week and just say straight up that, like, we're going to vote out Kamu. We still want to work with you guys, but we just can't trust Kamu. We can't miss the shot here. He's a really big threat. I think this absolutely was the right approach, and I really don't know why they didn't just do it right then and there. Like, Mallory knew this was what her and Melody needed to do, and for some reason, they just didn't do it here, because I don't know about you, Jacob, but the way that Mallory and Melody play the rest of this week was very baffling to me, to say the least, with the way that they decide to go about things. And I just want to hear your take on Mallory and Melody overall, because I think they've been some of the more, players with some more potential in the game. And I think they kind of squander it by the end of this week.
I think they've been very astute. I mean, I think that they were two of the first people to kind of call out like exactly like what's going on in the house. And like, to be fair, like Jason kind of like announced this, pledged this to everybody. It's like,
yeah,
like I do think that Mallory and Melody being in a situation where I'd argue Mallory was in the best position by this point of the week is insane to me as a concept. Like over the vets, over Kamu, over anybody from like the red corner. Like I was surprised when I kind of look at the board. I'm like, Mallory's looking really good in the long term here. And I do agree that not only is the approach of just kind of like telling them straight up, like, hey, like just being upfront from the get-go was the correct move in committing to that. I think that even just Kamu being the target of the three is the best move. And which, I'm especially impressed by Melody, because obviously Melody and Haley have a horrible relationship with each other. There's like they despise each other, but just Melody accurately knows the threat that Kamu poses in this game, especially in this era of Big Brother. So one thing that they do entertain later on that day, they are considering, what if one of us votes one way and the other person votes another way? But then it's like that even then that's a little bit questionable, because like obviously it's like depending on who wins the blockbuster, then it's like, well, one of you guys is lying about it. And clearly are trying to placate both sides of the fence. And that's another duo who I think, after Mallory chooses her to be to do the Adam and Eve punishment with, I think that's very well documented and well common knowledge that those two are allied with one another. So that I don't think there's a way for them to play this up like, Mallory is going to work with Yash and Taylor and Lala and Haley, and Melody is going to work with the remnants.
They needed to do it. They needed to do it together, and that's what Yash and Taylor do really well here. Is like they recognize like we need to pitch to the both of them and make sure that the both of them are included with us. And I don't know why that wasn't enough for Mallory and Melody to just stick with their original plan.
I don't know, because what happens at the end of the week is just like tells what like Taylor like right before the eviction. It's like, yeah, Kamu's kind of cooked, man. I don't know, man. I'm not gonna lie, because it's like there's a way to build a relationship to leave a door open that people are eager to walk through. Like I think like Yash, when he was told that Lyric was going home over Melody, like just Lyric was pretty much just going home and she does not win Blockbuster. Yash turned it down. He didn't want to go through with it. And he, in theory, is not going through with your plan, which is like, oh, like, no, I can't trust Yash. No one's leaving that thinking I can't trust Yash. People respect his honesty. People respect and still wanted to keep him around. He was still in very good standing in the house in the grand scope of things. And there's a way to do that versus, well, now you shut the door, but like done so in a way where obviously there's an opportunity to exploit that the way that they closed that door. You know, like obviously the vets kind of scooped up Taylor and like, they're there. Fuck Mallory and Mel. Well, I guess I don't know if I could curse. So I apologize. So screw Mallory and Mel.
Go ahead. I don't care.
Okay, but all right, I'll keep that in mind. I'm a sailor mouth. But just like
same.
How dare they weren't on? At least we didn't lie about wanting Kamu gone. We've been very upfront. Those two are the liars. Or like at best, Taylor's like, well, I still need them. It's like almost like necessity. It's not even like she genuinely feels good with people. So like now I kind of go into week 7. Where I'm like, Mallory is still in a good spot, Melody to a similar extent as well, but it's nowhere near as good as it was at the beginning of the week because, especially in the middle, where now it's just kind of just like they look like they're enabling the vets and are swayable and are able to be manipulated. I think that could potentially be a perception of like, oh, Mallory, you said that you were anti-vet and you were preaching all this up and down, and yet when it was time for us to do something against them, you're like, and you were kind of teetering and leaning back and forth. Now, granted, I know that we're getting close to the jury phase, and like obviously jury prospects haven't come up much aside from like Alala not being taken all that seriously and like Haley being Haley. So I think it's just no one needs to say Haley will lose a jury vote because it's, I think Haley also knows.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Haley was campaigning for Angela to win the game before everything went down. So, like, I think she knows that.
And I think, like, also just, like, at this point, like, I mean, if America votes, obviously Haley wins. I mean, clearly she's America's favorite, but, like, the jury's not America. And America's not the returnee that they chose from the season. It was Angela. So, yeah, no, very correct destination. Very the journey did not need to be as treacherous and as America's sweetheart Haley. It did not need to be this treacherous. It did not need to be this rocky and bumpy along the way.
Yeah, I think in general, like, again, I think that their fear is understandable because basically what happened is Angela kind of slips out during a mosh pit meeting that, like, essentially she was already working with Drew and Barrett, and Mallory and Melody were just kind of added to it. And this obviously sends like alarm bells in their heads. Like, I can't really trust them now. What do we do? Like, that's all completely understandable. But again, when you have Yash and Taylor who are making it pretty clear that, like, we want to work with you. We don't necessarily care where you vote here. We just want to make sure we're all on the same page so that way we can then work next round. The appropriate thing to do is just say, hey, listen, I hear your pitch. I get what you're saying. But if it comes down to Kamu and Angela, because this is all pretty much predicated on the idea that Haley wins Blockbuster and that it's between Kamu and Angela. And the whole thing is maybe we vote Angela because of, you know, maybe we vote Angela and they, you know, them basically saying that, like, I get your concerns, but ultimately, like, we're not going to vote Angela over Kamu, who is such a big threat, and we might not have this opportunity again. I don't think Taylor and Yash would have really responded badly to that. I think they honestly would have appreciated the fact that they were being transparent, and I think it would have continued to put them in this great middle spot. But instead, I think that they are basically taking away they're basically taking away their agency by deciding to wait and tell them at the last second. Because essentially what happens is Mallory does kind of just tell Taylor at the last second what's going to happen here. And it burns them. It makes it feel like they're untrustworthy. It makes it feel like you're just doing this because Drew and Barrett told you to do it. It gives them the credit over Mallory and Melody. It just completely ruins any sort of agency they had. Even if they're the ones to make the decision, that decision is kind of that sort of individualism is taken away from them. And here's the thing, I was praising Mallory at the beginning of this week, saying that, like, I liked how self-interested she was. I liked the fact that she was looking at things from the angles of, like, how does this affect my game? I don't necessarily care about the vets, but it does really feel like these conversations, it just made her and Melody kind of spiral, and it was just really disappointing to see, because I really did think they were more level-headed than ultimately what we end up seeing here.
Yeah, like, I feel that Mallory is somebody who's kind of been, I mean, on the up and up from, like, just like a fan base perspective. Obviously being a very endearing underdog figure, and just at the beginning of the week, I'm just like, how did she manage to do this? And even if it's in part due to a lot of people's failings and errors, I feel like Mallory was doing all the right things to capitalize on those errors. She was obviously building, because while Melody was in contention to go up, Mallory really wasn't during this week. And I feel like Mallory specifically, I kind of struggle now I kind of look at her as kind of like what Yash was maybe like a couple weeks ago, where I'm just like, who puts Mallory on the block right now? I can't really tell you who really has eyes on Mallory as a target in the immediate future. And she went from, like, I won't say public enemy number one. I don't think she was in that much peril, but, like, was Dee's scapegoat, and that, oh, she's the one who won the BB time capsule during the week that she won the bribe, and until she got the punishment next week, because people were just, she was already trying to plant the seeds, like, oh, and Mallory's this comp beast, won the vetoes, won a blockbuster, already won 2 comps already. She's clearly really good at this. And I think some of those threats are starting to subside.
And that's part of the reason she wants Kamu out, because she knows that he's such a big, like, physical threat in that way, that, like, with less physical threats, she can kind of be the one to start winning stuff. And I think she wisely kind of recognized that here.
And, like, which honestly, I would say, like, another thing was just, like, if we're looking at obviously Kamu long term versus, like, the vets from a physical perspective, that's a trio. But, like, and until, and I hate being shown thing to obviously Angela winning the blockbuster, Angela is equals Tucker, and then and then seeing who wins HOH after this point, it's like the argument I was going to make going into this recap, which was like, oh, well, I mean, the vets haven't done all that impressively in the competition so far. Like, Devens has to skip a good chunk of the competition to win the second HOH. He only is competing against vets in the first HOH. And so the only, like, and then obviously Devens wins a veto, so good on him for that. I can't really discredit that part. But just they don't have anything else on the board. So Kamu has won just as much as a trio of people has. Like, Kamu definitely is a huge threat in a block. Ironically, talk about the blockbuster, but is blocking Mallory from the end game that can really set up Mallory right now. Because I think Mallory just is generally endeared and beloved by the house. I think that she's aligned with people that others don't respect. And while I don't think, I think she beats a Melody at the end currently. I think she beats a Drew potentially at the end.
Oh, yeah.
I could see a world where, even though I think people like Barrett, I think also beats. I think she has the most win equity of FAP. I think of the 4. If it's a final 4 of all 4 of them, then I think positionally, I mean, she's not in the greatest position, but she has the best chance at winning. And Kamu is kind of somebody who could be the next coming of an MJ, next coming of a Morgan or Keanu, or like one of these people, or a Jag even, who kind of just wins everything just because he's jacked. So I agree. But again, as we've mentioned earlier, not the greatest handling of the whole situation. There's a way to turn them down. And they gave that opportunity to them. It's like, you could say no.
Exactly.
and kind of was playing with her food a little bit too much.
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to, is like the fact they don't give a definitive answer. They wait till the last second. They ultimately arrive at the right conclusion. A lot of that is due to, they don't show this in the episode, but Devens essentially threatens Drew and Barrett to basically be like, if you do anything, I'm just going to blow everything up. We're going to fuck the mosh pit, fuck, every other alliance. I'm just going to blow it all up, and you guys are going to be like the ones to blame. And Drew essentially like babysits the two of them from even potentially like going in the other direction. And again, it just sucks because I do think, again, if they had just initially told Taylor and Yash what they were going to do, I really do think all of this could have been prevented. But anyways, enough spending too much time on it. Let's get to the actual blockbuster, because as we talked about, it was very exciting. It was the one where you have to stack like the yellow balls and the red balls and things like that. And it's a very close race. It seemed like Haley was kind of struggling. Apparently she didn't want to do the strat that Angela was doing because she was worried it would like wreck her tattoo or something. That's the reason she's been using. I don't know what Haley just says things to say things at this point. But ultimately it comes down to Kamu and Angela, very close between them, but Angela wins the blockbuster. And look, I've not been loving Angela recently. I don't like the fact that she also says a lot of microaggressions and people just enable her behavior and things like that. And she gets mad that like Lala or Taylor are going to freak out, but like she freaks out and no one does no one says a damn thing about it. But I'll give it to her. This was impressive. This was an impressive win. The fact that she was able to do this, yes, she knew the strat from Tucker. That doesn't mean that it was going to work out for her. And yet it did. And I will definitely give her the credit. This was a very fun blockbuster to watch.
Forget the comp, just the celebration. I thought was fun because, clearly, the audience is eating it up. She's like, "Oh my gosh, oh my god,
yeah,
oh my gosh!" She's just obviously just like fangirling, which I find like hilarious. I mean, first comp, which I think was also something I forgot about her OG season. She wins 2 comps very early on, and I'm like, she wins the first HOH, and she wins 2 HOHs. What week 1 and week 4? I was just like, Angela's actually like pretty solid at competitions. It's actually pretty crazy. Obviously she doesn't go on to win all that many comps after this point, but this being her first comp win, I forgot an Angela celebration. I forgot what that was like. I needed that a little bit in my life. And then, but nobody, because I think everyone was just assuming Angela was going to be on the block when reading the assessment was like, okay, in each of these combinations of people, who do we vote off? And I could see another thing from Melody and Mallory. I could have seen her out where if it's Haley versus Kamu, maybe they consider getting rid of a Haley as a means of still I guess, well, obviously they can't get rid of Angela. Angela's not an option, but just kind of being like, we need Kamu here to help us get rid of these vets. We need these 2 people warring and going against each other. I could see an argument for that, but because it was Angela against Haley and Kamu in a competition, I don't think they really entertained that avenue. And I think
that's the thing that's so funny about it, is that they spend so much time on this possibility that it's like Angela versus Kamu, and it doesn't even come to fruition.
Even Angela versus Haley, because obviously Kamu winning in their minds, it's worst case scenario. So it's like knowing how good Kamu is at competitions, that's a pretty likely possibility. I think that was a scenario which I wish there was more discussion about. What do we do in a Haley versus Kamu situation in which yes, Haley is completely unequipped and has nobody on her side, and so Kamu absolutely is the bigger threat over her, but just Kamu does have some, and again, I think obviously he wasn't freaking out, kind of like what you mentioned earlier by why the DPOV ceremony was kind of boring, was because Kamu knows there's a chance that he survives beyond this week. He wins the blockbuster here. It's not like it's for sure he's going to go home unless he makes a scene, unless he takes a big stand and boldly proclaims, these are the people I'm gunning for. But just Kamu does have some merit in staying in the game as a direct opposition for the for the vets, for the icons, whatever. I use those terms interchangeably. But that was a very amusing aspect of this, because to be fair, I wasn't considering it. I was just assuming it was a final nod. So like the prospect of
definitely
getting rid
not,
of a vet was still realizable, I guess.
Yeah.
But I know that the only vote outcome that wouldn't have made this week interesting, but obviously takes a pivotal turn, is if Kamu wins. Because if Kamu wins the blockbuster here, I think that's the only vote where I don't think there's really all that much discussion. Yeah, it was just get rid of Haley. Like, even with like the threats of like the icons of it all, Angela's not the reason why they're threatening. I think more people are more scared of what Devens and D are capable of doing than Angela. It's just Angela's is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Volatile, very unpredictable. And so that's a person, at least D and Devens, you can rationalize with, and you can kind of sway them with logic. You can't really do that with Angela, because Angela just come decide that she doesn't fuck with you this week, and she could just blow up at any moment. So that was something that I found very amusing. Obviously, Angela winning when nor do I think really anyone was like, I mean, Angela can win this.
Yeah.
Against Haley and Kamu. There's a chance. No, that wasn't.
Yeah, no, kind of crazy the way that all went down. But let's get to the actual vote here, because the way this goes down is definitely very interesting. We see immediately people are in shock that Angela won. And we see Mallory and Melody gesture something over to Taylor. We're hoping that Lala is informed. Lala is not informed and is the only one to vote for Haley here. Kamu ends up going in a pretty unanimous vote other than that. And yeah, Kamu is gone. Very not shocking to see, but I think it's something that a lot of people didn't think was actually going to happen, but it does happen here. We get a quick interview with Julie where he's like really pulling the like Mr. Bible of it all and talking about how much, he loves Jesus and things like that.
Finds his wife, my future wife, if you're watching on Instagram.
Yeah,
me too. I forgot.
Yeah, send me coconuts. Yeah, fucking whatever. And Julie, for some reason, thinks Melody would have been the vote to keep him. In reality, obviously, it was Lala. I don't know what Julie is thinking of. Julie's been great, honestly, this season. This felt like, oh, there's a guy here who's into God, and I'm just gonna everything else, all logic is gonna go out the window. At that point, let's just quickly talk about Kamu here, because I do think that Kamu, there's two very different ways I look at Kamu. There's Kamu the person and Kamu the player. Kamu the person is a very deplorable human being who I do not want to talk very much about. He supports a lot of terrible things, and he has a lot of, weird views on stuff and things like that. Called out Jason for drag and things like that, and has made fun of George Floyd and all that kind of stuff, and that's all really bad when it comes to Kamu, and I think he is a really terrible person. Unfortunately, he's a very good player, and he showed that throughout his time on Big Brother. I do think Kamu is absolutely the right person for the vets to go for here. He was definitely going to be the most threatening for them. He is someone that probably was going to win this HOH, given now what we know, especially was probably going to win this HOH. And I think was going to be a genuine problem for that side. So I do think it definitely was the right time to take him out. I think really his only problem in the game is maybe flipping a little too early. I think maybe if he had stayed with that side, potentially he's able to kind of go the distance a bit more. Maybe he's able to be like a shield of sorts for the vets and continues to be in that position. But his eyes were opened, and he knew he needed to pivot, and it seemed like that was the right thing for his game. But ultimately, it wasn't. And this is where we get to sort of my conflicting feelings here. We're like, I'm very happy that Kamu left, but I hate that it was because of a fucking diamond power of veto that really should have never been there in the first place. The fact that Devens had this as long as he did for 6 weeks. The fact that, D had this bribe and things like that. The fact that, again, this should have been a week that one of the icons was taken out. The fact that it didn't happen is just really unfortunate to see. It's like Taylor, Lala, and Yash do all this work, and it doesn't even end up working out for them. It literally amounts to nothing. Dee, Devens, and Angela win the day, despite the fact that they played terribly this week and didn't really do much of anything to try to pitch in favor of Angela staying, other than Devens threatening them, which most of the time it comes off as, when you're not fucking sheep like Drew and Barrett are, most of the time that comes off as a reason, as like a turnoff, as a reason to not vote that way, because you don't like the fact that you're being threatened and you feel like, you know, you're using this against me. You don't like the feeling you get, so you vote the other way instead. Instead, they end up getting their way here. And again, it's frustrating to see. I love the fact that it's Kamu. I don't like the fact that, once again, we end the week with 3 vets and really nothing that Yash did amounted to much of anything here.
Yeah, like I will divide my thoughts on Kamu. Because like I also have those same conflicting feelings, you know. Like,
yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
It's like, because I'm a Christian, you know. I'm a religious person. I was raised. I wasn't saying I was raised in a church, but I spent a significant amount of my time, you know, in high school, in college, you know, involved in my church, engaged in a Christian missionary, and when he is as vocally about God, like he always did, like the Bible verses as he signed off in his voting confessionals and whatnot, it would be that I would see players like that and bring up faith. And Lala has brought this up too, but in a way that I felt like was to I won't say enlighten people, but to bring up hope and to bring people together and to draw people to one another. And you can bring up faith and religion in a way and believe and genuinely like express your Christian beliefs in a way that doesn't come at the expense of others, that doesn't come at the expense of discriminating people of certain demographics, of being judgmental. One of the fundamental things, like, you can't judge thy neighbor, and he constantly judged people around him. I don't like the way that he conducted himself. I think that he has some very unconscious biases, and to which I hope that with everything that obviously he's coming back to now, he can grow from and he can learn and evolve as a person. Because seeing all that stuff about George Floyd, seeing all the stuff that resurfaced while he was in the season, even just some of the things that he was muttering under his breath, you know, about like Drew and Barrett when they were wearing dresses and whatnot, I think clearly he is a very heavily flawed human being. But what stinks is that as a player, exactly that too. It's I don't know if I can't highlight messages, but the one that just came here, Kamu both preaching the Bible and telling all the ladies to hit him up on his Instagram. Clearly he deals with some lust. The lust is that inner demon that he's struggling with. That's what he's going to the altar for. But what stinks is that as a player, and I've used this comparison, he reminds me a lot of Hayden from BB12 if he was a dickhead. This is essentially how I've likened Kamu, because as I mentioned earlier, you know, I think he had lots of great attributes as a player in a season where we saw a lot of the vets act rather erratically and very enthusiastically because they were bored and they wanted to do something crazy just for the sake of just messing up with the whole house, even though they have the whole house in a grip. Kamu was this very stable presence, like, okay, let's not do that, because if he was a part of this, I was like, what's the point of us blindsiding people? Like, I think was a very rational and stable presence. If he didn't get something to go his way, he didn't blow up. I mean, I guess the Tea Party was an instance where I feel like both from a strategic and a personal perspective, both where the Kamu, the player, and Kamu, the person, overlapped, like in the Venn diagram. That Tea Party showed his flaws as a human being, because obviously he's not going as hard on Jason as he would for someone like Haley. If Haley was doing some of the stuff that Jason was doing, I think there clearly is some issues. But I think strategically had a very sound mind for the game. Obviously, physically, he was doing really well. And I was just very impressed by what I thought was an efficient recovery after the lyric blindside, where he is able to lock in that deal with Yash and to solidify things with Lala and Taylor. He is able to salvage his relationship with Dee, where Dee and Devens are reconsidering, hey, I want Kamu in my end game. That's insanity to me. And I'm like, what the hell are these vets doing? But like Kamu, generally, there were points in the season where I'm like, I could legitimately see this guy winning the season if they don't do anything about him. And it's kind of very similarly to like Riley, like from last season, where Riley had none of the skills that Kamu had none of the strategic acumen that Kamu had none of the focus or stability, both emotionally and strategically, that Kamu had, but was kind of in a similar spot where I was just like, if he's not taken care of now, he's gonna be impossible to get out, whether it be just from a physical perspective or from like a social perspective, because Kamu was slowly accruing and collecting this army of people where I thought that, you know, he could run with this thing, but unfortunately he stinks. So like I'm conflicted by obviously the Diamond Power veto playing a factor into his eviction. Like he is on paper a person that got screwed or got screwed over by an advantage that isn't present in every season of Big Brother. It's not him getting a very unfortunate blockbuster outcome. It's worse. It's Devens playing Russian roulette with advantages and luckily hitting the button at the correct time for him to get the one thing that could have sent Kamu home this week. Actually, I guess maybe two. Because like, yeah, the coin of destiny could have also technically just overthrown Yash's HOH and make this completely useless and completely unsalvageable for Yash. But yeah, no, Kamu is not a good person, but just definitely what he could have. And if anything, kind of similar to how I saw a lot of people hoping that like Haley survived last week, not because they liked Haley, not because they were starting to get endeared by her, but kind of what this does for the game as a whole, for causing friction, for causing a divide, for adding another element of chaos left in the game. Haley has been, what's the word I'm looking for? Has been diffused as somebody who can be that. It is now just a social pariah and a very unlikable one at that, who only you get enjoyment from ironic means and like you kind of making fun of her. Whereas like Kamu would have been this could have been a very riveting rivalry, could have been a thorn on the vet side, and like the one person they need to get out being Kamu, which obviously we can see how the game plays out from here. We're at final 11 right now, so there's still a chance, you know, that it's not just a sweep. But I think Kamu definitely would have ensured that it wasn't a sweep. I do agree. I think he definitely would have been the favorite to win this upcoming HOH, and to win more competitions beyond this point, even if he hadn't won HOH. But who knows?
Yeah, I think the comparison to Riley is very, very sound in the way where it's like that feels like a game-changing move. Again, I think the biggest difference though here is that there was a game-changing move here, and that was to get one of the vets out and really change the trajectory of the game. I still very much would have loved for Kamu to go, but I would have definitely loved to see the reality where, let's say this was, you know, and I thought about this today. Like, I think that even with that Diamond Power veto played, if like Haley's kept off the block, and let's say it's like Devens, Angela, and D from the start, Devens goes off, you know, Devens takes himself off the block, Kamu goes up, there's still that chance that we potentially lose one of the vets here. And I think that would have just been more exciting to watch. But ultimately, that is not the case. Kamu is evicted here. Happy that he's evicted. Again, just not happy that the vets continue to see another day, because things are getting bleak. Like, I don't want to get into spoilers too much because we're going to talk about it in the next one, but things are really getting bleak here. The microaggressions are getting way worse when it comes to Taylor and Lala. The power with the vets is continuing to just continue to grow. The self-interest of players is waning by the second. We have people who should be trying to win HOHs, and very crucially should be trying to win HOHs, and are deliberately choosing not to, and it's just ruining any chance they have of actually playing the game. This season is just really going downhill very quickly, and I really just don't know at this point if there is any saving it. It really did feel like these 2 weeks maybe were that point where things could be turned around, but with the direction things are headed this week and, you know, from here on out, I really just don't know if there's any saving the season at this point. I think this might just be a dud at this point, because things are just going in such a a negative direction. But what do you think things are? How do you think things are going to go from here?
Because like I've been because the fact that they even like they was even capable of a high. Because I was kind of in that kind of pessimistic, defeatist attitude at the beginning of the game. You know, obviously, like first week generally is slow. Is usually not enough for me to determine, because like, okay, this is going to be a horrible season. There's obviously people who lost me the first week. You know, obviously like the red corner of it all. A couple other comments I didn't particularly love, but in the following weeks, I'm like, okay, Devens has the most dramatic nomination ceremony of all time. Clearly, there's highlights, but there weren't good weeks. There was glimmers of hope in these terrible weeks, in these very mundane weeks of like, okay, so this person is going to go home. Nothing really changes as far as the target is concerned. Maybe there's some waffling on whether or not they commit to the plan, but it's not like 25 where Suri, Izzy, and Felicia thought that we keep switching who the target is. It's like, do we do it? Nah,
right.
Do it. Do we do it? Nah, we don't do it. Do it? Nah, we don't do it. And obviously the lyric eviction and the subsequent Lala, greatest debatably a bigger upset than Angela beating Haley Kamu in this competition, was able to sit it out during the wall comp. And I'm thinking, okay, while no one in the power structure is being targeted, at least we're seeing new people on the block. At least we're seeing new people in danger now. Now we're seeing some people sweat a little bit that haven't been sweating at all up until this point, and some people being shocked and mad at each other and distrusting each other when they haven't trusted each other before. Now, kind of the way that the game is planned out, especially considering who wins HOH, it's going to be more the same. I would be shocked if anything interesting happens this week. I'm kind of tuned out a little bit for this week specifically, and I'm hoping, I hope this next HOH, I hope this next one's exciting. I hope next week will give me something that I'm looking for. And now I'm kind of rooting for people to make bad decisions now. And that's kind of what it stinks. It's like, I'm hoping someone plays suboptimally, because then maybe I'll feel something again.
That's why last season was so good, because it was like every time you thought someone was going to make the logical decision and take out one of our favorites, they didn't. And instead things went the way we wanted it to. And, our favorites continue to do well. Right. I think that's really the thing with this season, is it's like we've had 2 seasons of people playing suboptimally, but it being like very entertaining to watch. This season, it's like people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, but I don't like what they're doing.
Right. But it's like the people, because like, if it's like 27 where everyone's playing poorly except Rachel and like kind of Will, and at a point Morgan, it's kind of what it felt like, or people playing well until they decided not to, and just never being able to play well ever again. But it's like everyone is doing this. Everybody is doing something probably stupid, and it's the glimmers of hope is the glimmers of like smart gameplay. There's a level of unpredictability, but I think that this season actually has people with lots of strategic or just way more strategically competent cast, and demonstrates so much more potential, which makes it all the more disappointing when they make suboptimal moves. It's not entertaining anymore because it's seen as frantic or unpredictable. It's disappointing, because we're seeing a lot of the same people benefiting from all these poor decisions. And we're even seeing when those people make poor decisions and they're doing things irrationally and not considering the consequences of what they're doing in the game. They're still the ones winning out at the end of the day.
And I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's the other frustration I'm having here, is that like 27, it's like Vince makes all these bad moves. There are consequences to what he's doing, because like he's losing allies by the minute. That's ultimately why he doesn't win the game. But this season, Dee, Devens, and Angela, they can form this alliance with Melody and Mallory, have zero follow-up with it throughout after forming this alliance, and yet they still end up getting their way just because of the fact that ultimately they play the Diamond Power of Veto, and Drew and Barrett are these loyal followers that are never even going to think twice about turning on them. So therefore, Mallory and Melody just figure they have to go in this direction and they can't really do anything else. And that's just not fun to watch. I like seeing self-interested players. I do not like seeing people who are constantly just playing for others. And that's very quickly what the season is turning into. And those that are playing selfishly are being punished for it. And that is very much not fun to watch.
Because like you see like Zach not using his advantage last season. And it's immediately like, even if like, oh, like, yeah, maybe he still stays when like, if Keanu doesn't win Blockbuster, well, he doesn't lose Blockbuster, he wins it actually. And then Zach ends up getting sent home. Riley trying to encourage Lauren to use the veto the week that he kind of sort of gets backdoored. Like backdoors don't exist as long as the Blockbuster is still a component in the format of Big Brother now, which I hate, especially for how long that it survives. I guess if I had to choose between this and forced fire making and Survivor, I guess I'll take the Blockbuster, but this doesn't mean I like it particularly. Then like see stuff like that, and you see people like Jimmy putting up Amy, you know, like those have at least relatively immediate consequences. And that to me is rewarding because it's like it should convey to the other players like, oh, I can't do that. But it's hilarious that no one learns the lesson. It seems like Ashley, this very, I guess, relatively stable person in the game, goes on to win because she isn't making stupid decisions every 2 seconds. But now it's here where it's like there are people are being put in these interesting positions and ultimately coming to the correct conclusions on who they should get eliminated, but their methods of accomplishing things or getting things done, or poor campaigning, or the lack of work or the poor work that they do following up with these relationships, kind of like what you were saying with the vets alongside Mallory and Melody and how they handled those two throughout the week. It's not being met with any repercussions. And we've been waiting 7 weeks, and now we'll probably be waiting 8 weeks for something to come up, and for especially now 4 weeks for the consequence of the lyric blindside, because none of the people who were involved in that move have been evicted yet, have even been successfully targeted all throughout the week. There's still, even with D on the block, still discussions, and still it's probably a very good likelihood that despite Kamu's best efforts, D doesn't go home this week, even if I guess Haley needs to win Blockbuster if Devens does not use the diamond power of veto in that situation, like maybe, but I don't know. I'm gonna hold out hope. I hope, because I forgot who said this, but someone said that bad Big Brother is bad, bad Survivor is okay, good Survivor is good, but great Big Brother is elite television. Yes. I forgot who told me that, but that's kind of been ringing in my head. And this is like bad Big Brother, so this is very boring to watch.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing is that, like, for me, I will always be an advocate of the Blockbuster because I think it made Thursday episodes feel like an event. And I think this season it has, besides like this week and like the lyric vote, it hasn't really mattered all that much, like what happens with the Blockbuster. And so I think that's why it's not really as exciting this season. But again, it really just feels like this season is going in just a darker direction. Every single week, it seemed like these 2 weeks were going to potentially turn things around. And like you said, I just don't see any saving it at this point. I think, this was the week that something needed to happen. And instead, nothing happened. Things basically are back to the way they are, except now the side that had built a resistance against the vets have lost essentially like their big shield. And now Taylor and Lala and Yash are in deep danger, unfortunately. Some of which I understand, a lot of which I don't, because of reasons that are not game related, as we've talked about. And then you just have the vets who are really just, and that's the other thing, they're not playing that well. And that's what is so frustrating to see, is that they're just not playing that well, and yet they are rewarded for it. It would be a different story if, people talk about Big Brother 25 and Suri, but Suri still is a great social player. Like, yeah, there were things Suri was doing strategically that was like, why are you doing that? That's like not really the greatest move. They kind of just like flip everything back. But Suri knew how to like gather her people. Suri knew how to continue to like better her position. People trusted her. She did a good job of like having all her ducks in a row. You can't say that about Dee, who spends like the whole week pretty much just like with her allies, and when she's not in power doesn't even bother to like check in with other people. It's just, you got Devens, who's like burning his alliances left and right. You got Angela, who is Angela. Like it just isn't looking great. It just really isn't looking great, and that's kind of where we're at. What were you gonna say?
This is probably the last thing I probably have to say about the week just as a whole, because I do like this recalling back to Suri. Because here's the thing, obviously Suri, as I mentioned earlier, the Izzy and Felicia of it all, they obviously contemplated flipping a lot of things, like whether or not to blindside by not evicting Riley, by saving Heisem, you know, like obviously reconsidering their moves all throughout the week. The difference between Suri and Aurichio versus kind of the vets this season is that even if I don't agree, I'm like, I understand where they're coming from when they articulate and they're talking with their closest allies and kind of like doing their cam talks and kind of like mapping out what their thoughts are and what led them to draw to this conclusion. Oh, this is what I should be doing. Even if it's not correct, knowing the information that I have, I'm thinking, okay, I understand why Suri is considering keeping Heisem here. I understand why she's considering keeping Riley in this situation. Even if the move's kind of like for pettier reasons, like, I just want to stick it to Cameron. I want to stick it to Red, which is flawed. I think there's still more rationale in these types of decisions than there is with Dee and Devens, who in Dee's case, I think is just, both of their cases, it's just, I'm bored. Because we can. Because it's funny.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, I don't understand why they go through, because like I can understand why they do the things that they do as far as like who they target. Their votes go to the right person at the end of the week, but they don't need to do it in the way that they're doing it, in the way that the reason why they're blindsiding them and considering getting rid of like Chuk over Haley or something like that. It's just like they don't need to be doing this at all. And so when they make decisions like this, I'm more annoyed. And honestly, we saw Suri and Rachel face more adversity. I mean, we see Izzy get blindsided in the pre-jury 100%. And see obviously Jared get sent out the door. You see Suri kind of playing from the bottom and still scraping by and building integral bonds in a position where like kind of similarly
because she's good at that. She knows how to play the game even when she's not in that power position. I'm not seeing that from Dee. Exactly. I'm not seeing that from Devens. I'm not seeing that from Angela. So therefore it's very hard for me to root for them and to really say like, oh, they're doing what they can to put themselves here. It really does kind of feel like it all stems back to them getting that first HOH and being the only ones eligible to compete in it. Like the whole season probably goes differently if that wasn't the case. And that really is where my frustration is here. I've seen the comparisons with like, oh, Kamu and Yash or Matt and Jag. And I just don't think that would be the case. I think that it would have made the season a lot more fluid if they were in the game for a while. Obviously, I would have wanted Kamu to go, you know, in a few rounds, but like at least have a couple more rounds of like just having that side even having a chance. It would have made the game more interesting, but now that's not going to be the case. And I just don't, like I said, I just don't feel great about the rest of the season, but we'll really just have to see.
Yeah, it's like there's seasons who like I've heard about, like in retrospect. Like I've started watching Big Brother Live from 20 onwards. And I've heard about some things through like the grapevine. So I was like, I know that 16 was a sweep. 19 was a sweep. Like those are being the best examples from prior to me watching live. You know, obviously 19 was just the summer before that. And I never understand. And obviously like 22 was, and I know how I feel about that season. But just seeing just a foil, even if it's an unlikable foil, someone you don't particularly want to root for, at some point you want excitement. You want something different. You want something new. And seeing people face adversity, kind of so glad I quit after the Keisha fight. So real, Jazzy. You were woke. You were onto something before any of us else were onto it. And
yeah, I also stopped watching that season after the Janelle vote. Actually, I was like, once I knew where it was going, I was like, that's the only season I've actively stopped watching.
For me, it was the Keisha one. That was like, okay, no, forget. Once I thought Keisha was going to win that HOA. Anyway, point being, I That's why I root for. I won't say like personal conflict because I don't want things to get nasty in there. There's been already some things that we kind of mentioned a little bit, and like in this review, in this retrospective of the week, where some people have said some questionable things. And obviously, like I don't want conflict in that regard. I want people battling each other in the game. That's why I was rooting for Rome so much.
You'll see next week it's gotten even worse than what we're talking about here.
Like, yeah, so it's like Rome was. I was like, oh, the Roman Empire. Like
that was fun. That was
fun. All these, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. They're going to take this big shot at Rome, and if he wins the blockbuster, Rome is gunning for him with all of these people.
That's what we needed. We needed Rome to win the blockbuster. We didn't know it at the time, but like that's really what we needed.
Rome, or like a Jason if he won the week 3 blockbuster. I'm like, you having a foil in your game and seeing just it not be a steamroll, whether you like that person or not, is riveting Big Brother. And there's a reason why Big Brother 6 is held in as high of regards as it is, because it's the sovereign. No, that's not the sovereignty. All right, the sovereign 6 versus the friendship. And we were rooting for the friendship a lot more, but I think BB6 is elevated by the fact that it wasn't just the sovereign 6 sweeping. I think BB6 wouldn't have been held in as high regards if it wasn't a pendulum swinging back and forth between side versus side, and casualties were happening every which way, and you don't know who goes home. But when it's a season like this, despite the fact that it's more people getting up on the block, more possibilities and more vote combinations, obviously combinations of nominees, where in theory more people are in peril, less people are in this season, because there's people who are enabling others. We were rooting for no, we were not rooting for the friendship, but we were rooting for the sovereign 6. Yeah. But I think my point being, in BB6, if the sovereign 6 just ran that season, I don't think BB6 is as well regarded as it is now, because it wasn't two sides gunning for each other. Maybe that's a hot take for me, because obviously no one was rooting for the friendship. But yeah, BB10 too. I haven't even considered that also a season where it was just very fluid. There wasn't, I guess there was
even
like
last season, I would say there was like a pendulum swinging back and forth. It's just one of the sides was fucking terrible and the other side was like actually good at the game. Right. But there definitely was like a back and forth there. And I think the last 2 seasons have actually been pretty fluid. Yes, 26 kind of turned into a steamroll, but it didn't start out that way. And it was actually very fun to watch that steamroll like slowly like develop. This season, again, what's the story here? Like the vets just run away with the game because production helped them do so. Like I don't think that's fun to watch.
Yeah, BB20 had 2 sides as well. If only one side wasn't Faute, that's like an anti-side. That's like the opposite of like 2 sides. Maybe it's man, BB20, even like the pre-jury was amazing. Generally, one of my favorite pre-juries of all time was BB20. Like even despite Faute's failings, like they got rid of Winston and Rachel. Like, which that's such a shame. That like I'm like Scotty did something right on his HOH. But anywho, I don't know if there's what else is there. Did you want to talk about, Kevin?
I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'm very frustrated with this season. I really was hoping that this would be I was really excited to see how this week was going to go. I thought like, okay, Yash is taking a big swing here. I have some qualms with what he did, but it just is really unfortunate to see the way things ultimately played out. I think also like keep in mind, we are filming this like right after we now know like who the HOH is and things like that. I do think if we were to have done this last night, we would be in much better spirits. We would have been like, okay, Kamu's gone. Let's see how this HOH plays out. But now seeing how things have gone, it just feels like the whole week was kind of a wash. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I guess I'm excited to talk about what happened. I'm not really excited to talk about everything that's going down this week because it's not fun stuff to talk about. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it. Before we do wrap things up here, Jacob, I'm going to let you have the chance to, say whatever you want to say before we wrap things up here. Plug anything, all that kind of stuff. Go right ahead, my dude.
First off, thank you so much, Kevin, for giving me this opportunity. I don't remember the last time. I definitely was on here. I know for a fact I did something with you, but I don't remember what it was for. So thank you so much for bringing me back on here, but dying to come back and cover this season. Plug plugs. Do I have anything that plug? Well, I don't have to have a podcast. I would love it. I've been told I have an ASMR voice, a podcast voice.
So you don't.
Apparently, I have that. I definitely have
this is the longest one I've done. So like that alone should tell you that Jacob
the capacity to be a yapper. Yeah. So obviously, maybe this is going to be just me and Kevin's show from this point. Do we need guests? If clearly we could talk for just 2 hours, just the two of us alone.
Yeah, we don't need. We don't need somebody else that's potentially going to be on next time. Like that's no, that's not. That's
screw
not,
whoever they are. But anywho,
exactly.
Again, thank you so much for tuning in. For those familiar with the org community, root for me in TTC, snakes versus rats. I think that's it. I don't really have all that much to say. Again, thank you so much for bringing me here. Yeah, kind of echo a lot of the same sentiments. Would have been in much higher spirits, knowing like there's hindsight bias. Again, I think with any week that you cover, unless it's just raw, like right after the eviction,
that's why
just
I like
our unfiltered raw thoughts. Because to be fair, it was supposed to be yesterday, but I thought I had a prior, what's the word, like commitment that was supposed to be dated on the 20th that had to attend but couldn't due to me maybe or maybe not feeling sick. So we moved it to today. But again, I hope this is the last that you see for me, whether it be this season or just any.
Yes, you'll definitely be on again for sure. We always appreciate your insight. But other than that, that's it for this video. As always, comment down below. Let us know what you guys are thinking of this season. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. If you do enjoy this video, I have a ton of other TV and movie related content. So if you're interested in any of that, definitely consider checking my channel as well as subscribing. Love to be a part of all of that. Other than that, guys, for this video, hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you guys later. Okay, bye.